Hi everybody, I'm back with another review, and this time, as promised, I'm going to review Deadlands Reloaded by Pinnacle Entertainment Group using the Savage Worlds game engine. Now, as I explained a bit in my Savage Worlds review, this has kind of come full circle. When it was originally published in its original form, where I first played Deadlands, it used its own unique system, and this system consequently was later revised and adapted, and even quite changed quite a good bit into Savage Worlds, and then Savage Worlds ended up being plugged back into Deadlands by way of Deadlands Reloaded. So it has had an interesting life cycle and an interesting progression. So at the core of the conversation, before we get specifically into what is Deadlands Reloaded, what is Deadlands? Deadlands is a Western role-playing game, like an Old West role-playing game, a la, all of your classic spaghetti westerns, and all your good Clint Eastwood flicks, Fistful of Dollars, or Tombstone, or even the later, the more recent movies in the genre, like 3:10 to Yuma, fantastic film. And it is very much a spaghetti western at heart. What makes Deadlands interesting then is that they take a lot of other genre tropes and they mix it. It's a mixed bag. They throw a lot of other stuff in there. There are elements of fantasy, there are elements of horror, there are elements of science fiction, and it is really it's a very open canvas to allow you to paint a very broad array of different types of campaigns. There are many different styles to playing Deadlands, and it's not necessarily every game is going to be played the same way. So what it is it approaches from an alternate history perspective, and that it assumes that Earth's history has been pretty much the same as the history that we know up until the early 1860s. And then in 1863 there was a great devastating earthquake that shook the very foundations of our great nation, and specifically, ended up, amongst other things, about half of California fell away into the Pacific Ocean, and it left this series of deep trenches and canyons, and consequently, California ended up becoming a place called the Great Maze. And what was discovered when this happened was that titrated into the earth deep below the remnants of California was a new mineral called ghost rock. And ghost rock is responsible for a lot of the science fiction elements of the setting, whereby it's a mineral that's similar to coal, and it's combustible, and it can be used it can be burned and to generate steam, or just used as a fossil fuel in a sense. But the thing that makes ghost rock interesting is that ghost rock burns hotter and longer than coal, which makes it a very, very sought-after commodity. So virtually an entire kind of aspect of the Deadlands setting is this idea that people are fighting over the rights to get this ghost rock because it is so valuable and because it's so unique and interesting to the world. So you have this great earthquake, and then you have some horror elements and fantasy elements going on in the background as well, where people start to realize shortly thereafter, I think it was about 1867, if I recall correctly. No, maybe it was I'm getting it mixed up. 1863, during the Civil War, some rumors go around that soldiers that were being killed in the battlefield weren't staying dead, and that they were returning to life. 1868 then is when the great earthquake happens. So what you end up with is an alternate history where the Civil War really never ended. The Civil War actually ends in a ceasefire in 1878 or early 1879, I believe. With tensions are still high, but the two countries, the Confederate States of America and the United States, have worn each other out. They're tired of fighting for the most part, and they come to an agreement to host a very tenuous ceasefire. So at the same time, you've got this ghost rock boom. So you've got people pushing out west. You've got the Great Rail Wars, which is all of the rail companies that are pushing to be the first one to build a transcontinental railroad, because the first person who can build a transcontinental railroad will be the first person to claim rights to moving ghost rock swiftly and efficiently throughout the rest of the country, thus sealing their power base. So you've got a lot of interesting character types in here, and it introduces, to go along with the fantasy element, Deadlands introduces a lot of different types of magic. You've got hucksters, and hucksters are sort of your classic maybe sorcerers or tricksters, in that how they learn about their magic is that Hoyle, who wrote the original Hoyle's Book of Games, which cataloged all these different card and board games together, you find out Hoyle himself was secretly a magician, and he encoded in his book, the Hoyle's Book of Games, these secrets on how to tap into this sorcerous magic. And the huckster's magic works by the huckster sending kind of a spirit avatar to the hunting grounds, which is the Indian spirit world, and he battles it out, in a contest of wills with these evil spirits called Manitou. And by wrestling a Manitou and besting him in a game of wits, the huckster basically forces the Manitou into a temporary servitude to perform some kind of magical act that he's trying to do. And they have all kinds of different powers, from being able to turn invisible, to scrying, to shooting bolts of lightning, or draining people's souls, and all kinds of other stuff in between. And so hucksters generally go around acting or disguising themselves as gamblers, because this goes along with the themes of their magic and the fact that their magic stems from Hoyle's Book of Games, and a lot of their magic manifests, or when they're manifesting their magic, a lot of it manifests as poker cards that come kind of flying out of their hands and stuff like that. You've also got Blessed, who are your more traditional kind of cleric type characters, where they are attached to a particular deity or religion, and it doesn't have to be Judeo-Christian. There are other options, like if your character is Buddhist, or if you're a Shintoist, or these just other different types of religious faith. And this faith powers miracles. Basically, you beseech your greater power or your faith to call upon miracles. So you can do anything from healing to blessing people, to repelling demons, or consecrating an area, or all different kinds of effects. You've also got Indian shaman, and the shaman are what you would expect shaman to be, which I find interesting and refreshing, in that they perform rituals to appease the animal spirits, the totemic spirits, to perform favors for them. And in order to convince a spirit to perform a favor for you, the spirit needs a sacrifice. And so this can be anything from fasting to self-mutilation to making promises, or wearing certain trinkets or something in dedication to the spirit. And obviously, the more significant the favor that you're asking of the spirit, the more significant the sacrifice the spirit will ask you to make. So it's a really interesting trade-off, and it's a very flavorful system between the three types of magic, between the huckster magic, the blessed magic, and the shamanic magic. They all feel very differently, even though they generally work off of the same power system that exists at the core of Deadlands. You can have each of these characters with the same power, but even just the feel of each of the powers is very different, by the way that the magic is invoked, by the thematics, by the trappings. As I mentioned in my Savage Worlds review, trappings are very important to how powers work in Savage Worlds games. And then you've also got weird scientists, or mad scientists, and these are people who have this kind of insane greater inspiration that they've come into, and they're able to create these fantastic devices, steam-powered automatons and Gatling pistols and other bizarre things. So I will be right back with my second part, so stay tuned.